Welcome to the No Show. My name's Andrea Edwards.
And my name is Joe Augustin. Welcome to the show that tries to keep you informed about the stuff you may not have seen because of all the other stuff that's been sucking up all the air in the room. It's also for anyone who perhaps has been trying to avoid the news altogether. This is a safer way to get updated, I feel. Before we go any further, like and subscribe on whichever format that you are watching this on or whichever platform you're watching on. And we have to tell you that usually the No Show is a live show. It's a live stream. This is the only time that we have recorded it. So this was recorded yesterday, one day before it went on the air. Because so much can change in the meantime, and we're doing that because we're all attending the Asia Professional Speaker Singapore Convention, which is happening as you're watching this, maybe. We also try to have diverse perspectives on our show, and usually we have only one guest. Today we're pleased to have two guests join us. They're also here for the convention. Dr. Saurabh Patil is a renowned keynote speaker, coach, and accomplished restaurateur. His work centers around men's mental health, where he is breaking down barriers and fostering open conversations. And our second guest, having spent half of her life in China and Singapore, Zhang Xintian, has bilingual fluency and a bicultural understanding of both societies. She works in cross-cultural communications to promote collaboration between China and South Asia. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really great to have you both here. Let's kick it off with a brief introduction from both of you. Saurabh, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you so much. Hi. So my name is Saurabh Patil. I'm come from Mumbai, India. I am a SPR coach, a keynote speaker, and an author. I work with men to help them channel their anger, to make them better individuals, balance decision making in their work, life, and have a clarity of thought. Recently, I've published my book, The Alchemy of Anger, which is about how men should have a relationship with their anger. Unfortunately, how the relationship is now and what they should be doing to channel their anger rather than anger be using them. So that's me.
I saw the title of your book, The Alchemy of Anger. I thought it was a great title. Do you want to give us a bit more about that, because I thought it was fascinating.
So all these years, I had a lot of issues with my own anger. I used to get triggered, I used to lash out, and then I noticed that there's a certain pattern with a lot of men who suppress anger, who bottle it up, and some just lash it out by throwing things, substance abuse. That is when I decided to explore this field, understand what anger is, and it's unfortunate that the anger is using men, or the anger is using a man to do things, because you're always in the passenger seat, and it's like a auto drive car, where the anger is driving the vehicle. You're in the passenger seat. You don't understand where the car is going. You see the car is damaging the properties, breaking all the rules on the road, but you're not able to do it. The only thing that you feel is the guilt that you're not in control. So the book talks about how you can get into the driver's seat, how you can get control of that car called anger, how you can channel it, to do something much better, drive properly, innovate, become a balanced individual, have a good physical, mental health, become a better decision maker, be vulnerable, but at the same time, explore yourself, open up, talk about what you're feeling, channel your emotions. So all these things go with the flow in the book, and it also talks about my journey, how I was able to get a hold on my triggers and control the anger, channel it.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a very worthwhile book. I wrote a chapter on anger and how it controls us in my book. So not a whole book on it, but it's great. All right, Xintian, we just discovered that in 1995, I visited your region of China. Amazing. So it's a very different place now. But tell us more about yourself.
Hi, sure. I'm Xintian. So like our host correctly mentioned, I've almost split half my life in Singapore and China. So after I graduated from junior high school, I got a scholarship to study in Singapore. And that was actually my first time overseas. And it was a great journey. And since then, I've been in Singapore. So in my career exploration, I started in journalism, market research, qualitative research, and then a little bit in UX. And currently I work in international relations. So we are an organization that help to facilitate trade and communication between Singapore and China. It's very interesting to be in that position because we are a Singapore government supported organization. So I kind of look at China from another angle, and we do have Chinese Singaporean ministers on board. So it's very interesting to look at how communication goes and to really support China from Singapore's perspective. And I'm really excited to share more. I know we have a lot of exciting topics to talk about.
Nice one. Well, I'm sure things have been interesting lately, so I'm sure everything's changing. So yeah, really interesting. Because last 2 weeks ago we spent a lot of time talking about what's going on between the US and China, and obviously that continues, doesn't it, Joe?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of things happening. So, I mean, that's how we start the show now, a little bit differently as well, to get us to think a little bit outside the box, perhaps, is that first question we want to ask about, which is any moment in the last couple of weeks that has got your attention, taken your breath away, got you surprised. Maybe Xintian, you start off with something that caught your attention this past few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I find it really interesting. There was this humanized robot marathon that happened in China. I look at the photos; they're hilarious. The robots, they're in all kinds of positions you can think of, and there will always be 1 or 2 humans chasing them and try to record their timing. And I also know from the news that the colleagues in my office, I also receive very mixed reactions. Some of them are very anxious about actually the robots are able to do so many things. Then, so I also sense the anxiety from the office, which I find very interesting.
It's funny. My husband was showing me a video of these Chinese robots that are laying railways faster than they've ever been able to lay railways before. And it's this immense technology, this robot. And yeah, China constantly blows me away. The tree planting robots, have you seen them?
Sorry, what is that?
The tree planting robots.
Tree planting robots? No.
Yeah. Also from China. Really incredible stuff. Now, did the robots succeed in finishing the marathon, or did they not? I can't remember.
I think there's so many of them. Yeah, so I don't know the exact results.
It was a mixed result, because what it is it is quite a long process to finish off a marathon, even for a robot. So some of them performed as well as I would have, which is not
that's not saying much.
Yeah, but about half of them finished the race, as I understand, and it was slow as well. So I felt more akin to them than ever before. But yeah, it was a test of technology, because it is a hard thing to do a long distance race like that. So the equivalent in racing, for instance, is Le Mans, the 24-hour race, right? You can have a fast car, but can it go for all that time? So that was what this particular marathon was about, in terms of testing your technology to be able to go further and fast and as fast as possible.
All right, Sarab, what's yours? What's your news of the week? Or
well, when we're talking about robots, yes, something is really also happening in India. I mean, recently there are a lot of robots which are working around in. I come from a hospitality business, so I see a lot of robots growing in the hospitality business, where the robots are taking, the orders from the customers, serving them food. And recently, a lot of people are also using robots for domestic use in the house. So I think, talking about robots, I think AI robots is growing manifold, because we are finding a lot of applications for a day-to-day usage, which are reducing human efforts and growing with more efficiency in the business and at home and workplace. So it's amazing.
I'm always bothered by these sort of developments, right? Because if you put robots into a lot of those sort of positions, first of all, is the customer experience in a restaurant any good with a robot? Because most of my experiences are terrible unless a human's involved. But just from a population perspective, replacing so many jobs that the poorer people in the community can do, is it a good thing for society?
Well, it's a very contradictory stuff. I mean, you can it's the downside is this: you're going to lose job, but also at the same time, when you have a very large menu, a customizable menu, that is where a human touch is more imperative rather than having a robot. A robot would be useful at a place where you have a fixed menu, you have a fixed items on the menu, and the servings is limited. So the robot knows this is the algorithm, this is how I have to work, 1 2 3 4, and that's how they take the order, they serve. But where you have a customized menu where you give the customer more experience, that is when a human touch is required. And that is where, you know, you have a lot of jobs where people curate it, serve it in a better manner, not just the food, but the way it is served, the ambience, the experience that you give the customer. So at one end, we're talking about efficiency with robots, but the downside is the jobs that we're losing. But at the same time, in the hospitality industry, the way the restaurants and the food trucks and the food business is growing, there's so many restaurants, majority of them still have human as, you know, employees who give a customer the experience that is required. So we are not still at that stage where robots are, you know, eating up the jobs. 90% of them still have humans, human employees or staff who are serving the customers.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that just bothers me, that we're keeping an eye on the right things. Joe?
Well, I mean, as you know, there's you may know there is the elections happening here in Singapore, and I won't comment about the policies. I won't comment about what the campaigners have been speaking about. I've been surprised really at how quick people are to get upset or feel they have to get upset about things people say. You know, like in the course of all the rallies that have been spoken, there've been certain things that have been said that have been that have been taken to mean that people are crossing the line in certain ways, either in terms of referring to someone with a term that's supposed to be derogatory, or someone talks about their own attitude towards family, and LGBT and stuff like that, and the kind of prepackaged anger that seems to be coming along with that. People want to get upset with that, and that's just been the thing that's been getting me. I go like, yeah, you know, I heard someone today say someone was an idiot, you know, who was running for the elections, and it was just based on this one utterance that they had about one particular thing. And I realized that, you know, it's so much about likability sometimes than it is about the policies and stuff like that. In the end, is, do I like you? And, you know, if I like you, you get into office. I'm not sure that's the only thing that's important.
Yeah, so I think for people who aren't familiar with Singapore, the PAP has basically been in charge since nearly 60 years. Yeah,
a long time. Yeah, the whole time we've had the republic,
and we'll continue. I'm seeing people talking about they potentially could see a drop off in numbers, which is usually 1 or 2. But I think the government's carried the country through some pretty hard times. So I don't know what the final results will be, but it's going to be a PAP led party, right?
What about you?
Well, we started the week off obviously with the Pope's funeral, which I didn't sit down and watch it live, but what I saw was very beautiful and moving. I thought it was reflective of the person that he was. So that was one big thing. But then we've had a few big incidents happen in the last week. The first was there was a chemical explosion at a plant in Iran, and 70 were reported killed with 1,200 injured. However, they're saying that the authorities are drastically underreporting the figures, and they believe that 250 have been killed with close to 1,500 injured. So we'll see what comes out there. In Vancouver, Canada, we saw a driver. He looked like a Filipino. Crashed into a Filipino festival, which killed 11 people. There was a 5-year-old girl with their parents killed. Some of the stories are really quite sad. There's more than a dozen still in hospital. And then in the US, the US strikes on Yemen, killed 68 African migrants in a detention center. So this center is basically holding about 100 people, and they're typically from Ethiopia and other African countries, and they've been detained as they try and cross the country to get work in Saudi Arabia. So I kind of really felt for those people because life's already hard. So the US has carried out more than 800 attacks on targets in Yemen since mid-March. It's an incredibly poor part of the world. More than 250 people have now been reported killed by this campaign by the US. So they're just some of the other bigger news stories we're not going to have time to dig into. All right. Sarab's sharing a room. It's all right. All right. Do you want to get stuck into some of the bigger stories?
Yeah. These were the stories that were very current just yesterday.
Yeah. Well, these are the ones that I think hold their own no matter at what point you watch the show. So first of all, Amazon was in the news and Bezos bent the knee. And so if you haven't heard it, basically what happened was that Amazon announced it was planning to detail the costs of trade tariffs to its customers on its website. And then what they were going to do is they were going to itemize the costs, so the tariff part, which obviously said to customers, just you are paying the tariffs, not China. So that was the kind of the message. Amazon said it was looking into itemizing the costs for shoppers using its site Amazon Haul, which I'd never heard of. Apparently, it came into life last year. It's a low-cost site that was looking to compete with Shein and Temu. And that wasn't a distinction that I saw when this news story first broke out. But anyway, in a news conference, the press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, said she had discussed Amazon's reported move with the president. I don't know if you saw her. She was also pushing, what's his name, Scott, whatever her person out of the way. And said it's another reason why Americans should buy American. So I'm presuming that Amazon Haul does not have American products for sale. But anyway, she declared this is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? Anyway, apparently Donald Trump called Bezos, who is no longer the CEO of Amazon, and it said, we've decided not to move forward. The idea had never been under consideration for its main platform. So obviously Trump is saying, look at everyone bowing down to me. But it's also sort of raising alarm bells around, is that the way a US president should be acting towards private companies? Did you guys see or hear anything else on that story?
Well, it was just very interesting the perspective that was taken on that. I saw the video that essentially was saying how most of the tech bros were supporting Trump because the enemy of your enemy is a friend, and they thought, you know what, we can try and control him as we go as he moves along, and then things happen, and then the tariffs happen, and they were significant enough to impact their business in a dramatic way as well. And because Amazon deals a lot with customer service, they're customer facing all the time. And their whole thing has been about trying to make sure that the customer experience has been great. I mean, so Jeff Bezos, had that. Basically, I think his goal, and I don't think it's changed as well, is to be the number one customer service business in the world. And so to that end, they try to do things for the customer. So information like this would have been very useful to a customer when they're trying to decide or understand why certain things are happening. It would have been really good for them as a business to say, we're not doing this to you. This is the cost that goes along with everything. But politically really inconvenient to do what I think is just good business. We have the same thing that comes up on our sites here as well. They tell us how much of it is GST, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's all sort of part of the, these pushback, this realization, this awakening in America that tariffs are in fact a cost borne by the customer.
Something I thought of was because tariff itself is actually quite complicated, and there are actually many ways to avoid tariffs. So, for example, there are Chinese companies; they have the satellite companies and outlets in Southeast Asia. So it's really hard to trace it. So I'm thinking Trump could announce all these big policies, but in the end of the day, how to calculate it is really a question mark. So I feel a lot of time is really about the big actions that make people feel threatened, other than the actual economic cost. But I really feel it, and also among my friends who are entrepreneurs, they also feel it. So that just brings a lot more questions on mind.
And you see the pictures of the ports being empty, and the expectation that within months, like the shops will be empty, you know, clothes, food, everything, you know. So it's it's interesting. Stirrup?
Yeah. I agree with Joe, you know, that Amazon somewhere wanted to protect the interests of their customers, where they would, you know, directly, instead of following the tariffs, they wanted to give the clarity to their customers about the rising prices, which was not their fault. And as well as that, you know, Amazon wanted to do, I think, one more thing, like, you know, leverage the business, where Amazon works with so many third party vendors, sellers, global suppliers all across the world. So, you know, by flagging this, I think Amazon wanted to position in a way where they wanted to advocate for all these third party sellers that they're working with.
Yeah. So going across the other side of the world, the lights out. We're in Portugal and Spain. But before I want to talk about it, I want to reference another article that was in what do you call it? Sky News. So Fox Media publication. All right, which is Murdoch. So in the UK, according to this report, the Climate Change Committee, which is headed up by a lady called Baroness Brown, has basically said that the UK is not even remotely ready for climate change. They're moving glacially, or they're not moving at all and going in the opposite direction. And there's 46 measures of government delivery. None of them have been rated as good. And this is protecting railways, so they collapse in the heat. So when I was there a few years ago, when they had that big shocking heat wave, the railway line started to buckle. Water, food security, and obviously we know the water situation in the UK is appalling. But she basically said it seems to feel like it's tomorrow's problem, which is happening all across the world. If we don't tackle it today, it becomes tomorrow's disaster. So then you go across the pond to Spain and Portugal, who had this incredible breakdown on the electricity grid. It's the worst blackout in living memory in Europe, and 55 million people were affected, including some of our friends. I honestly thought when it happened, and I haven't seen anybody talking about this yet, this happened in the middle of summer, because they're expecting shocking heat to come through the region again this year. It would have been a much different situation. I do believe there were some deaths because of it, probably like car accidents because the traffic lights went out. But one of the things that really stood out to me was that within moments of this happening, there was a declaration or a statement, which apparently it wasn't official, but it was from the Portuguese grid operator REN, who said it was because of a rare atmospheric phenomenon. So people instantly said the first grid breakdown from climate change. That was the first sort of statement that I saw going out. But then it turns out that the weather in Spain was normal, so it wasn't that. The next thing that happened was the fossil fuel industry sprung into action, and they were blaming renewables and net zero emission targets as the reason why this happened. Because both Spain and Portugal obviously have very, very high levels of solar and wind in their energy grid because, you know, based on where they are. You can see it, energy industry executives across LinkedIn, in the media, especially the right-wing media, they were all making these claims, and it's going to take the engineers weeks to understand. In fact, it's not. The governments are expecting a report by the grid operators next Wednesday, but it's going to take a long time to understand why this happened. And there's a long history of examples where grids have fallen over, their nuclear, their hydro, their fossil fuel, their solar, their wind. There's lots of different reasons why they go down. But it just felt like, to me, it just felt like the fossil fuel industry was really showing their true colours. Because another report just in the last couple of weeks was that 89% of the world's population wants action on climate change. 89%. And here's the fossil fuel industry turning around saying, we've got to bring fossil fuels back in to get grid security. But higher temperatures do not bring grid security because heat, as people, Sarabia in India, experiences grid breakdown in the extreme heat events on a regular basis, and that's not sustainable energy. So I don't know, when you look at what's happening around the world, we've seen just in the last few weeks, India and Pakistan are getting close to 50 degrees Celsius. It's 6 to 8 degrees above average for this time of year. It's early, it's lasting longer. I'm really worried for May and June. The Middle East, they're getting up around 50, passing 50. This is far too early for this to be happen. So what's going to happen, we've heard construction workers in India are already passing out from heat stroke. The deaths will pile up, the morgues will fill up, especially if these goes for a long time. So I don't know, it just felt like a very coordinated and very rapid mis- and disinformation campaign by the fossil fuel industry that I think is really misplaced for the time that we're in, based on the impact that we are all seeing. We're seeing it especially here in the global south. Thailand experienced a wet bulb temperature, Phuket, 52 degrees Celsius. Completely unlivable. This is just this last week. Today, that extreme heat. It hasn't been as hot in the hot season in Thailand as it was the last couple of years, but 52 degrees Celsius wet bulb, it's just deadly. So yeah, I don't know, it felt very cynical to me, and I think it's like a last gasp. The game is over. We all know that we need to get rid of fossil fuels wherever we can, as quickly as we can, in every way that we can. And now they're going to go out after the renewable energy grids. No. Okay. Are there problems? Sure. Do we need to fix it? Sure. But all grids have problems. And, the Heathrow airport, when that went down, that was because of a fossil fuel grid. So I don't know, it just felt really cynical. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to that story. It just really annoyed me.
Yeah, no, I must confess I wasn't, but I'm also mindful about the thing about rushing to a side, right? Because it's natural for them to go into that area as well, and as it is for you as well to go in defense of it, because like you said, we don't know, right? We really don't know. It's going to take some time to find out exactly what happened. Could it be the answer is both? Could it be that's like you said, things need to be worked out. Something fell over. We got to work things out. And I think one of the things that I've been getting more and more aware of in the last few years has been this idea of the 100-year event, right? I mean, engineers have been trained to design stuff based on 100-year occurrences. Meaning in the extremes of weather and history and what have you and all that, these extreme events that happen only once in 100 years, you should be able to design so that your infrastructure is able to kind of sustain that. And it's changed radically. I mean, if you think about a country like Singapore, for instance, right? I mean, if you think about a country, if you're asking about a country that is more prepared for the future than any other country I know, it's Singapore. And we were caught off guard by the increased rainfall, so that we had flooding. It was called ponding at the time, but it was all that kind of stuff that happened. It caught us out. It caught Singapore out when we were so prepared for stuff in general.
Yeah.
And that's because of all the changes that have occurred. It's really about the stuff that you don't prepare for. You're not really prepared for because you can't foresee it. So Europe's facing a big problem because European weather has never been that kind of weather. It's like what's described as a heat wave in Europe is a Wednesday afternoon in Singapore, right? So that's the kind of a difference that's had to happen. So infrastructure, the whole design, the whole list of assumptions that upon which everything was built were based on a different world. So it's very easy for something to fall over. It was kind of it may not have been right at the edge, but as the weather conditions moved it maybe close. So it may not even been the weather. I mean, we may find out in the end something else happened, but the stresses obviously overwhelmed the system.
So the 1 in 100-year event's interesting. So I've been married to an engineer for 20 years, so I was educated in that terminology. There's also 1 in 500-year and 1 in 1,000-year events. So the first 10 years of our marriage, the 1 in 100-year events were as predicted. The second 10 years of our marriage, they're happening every year, right? So that's caught everyone off by surprise. The other
And
thing
you should be
is,
clear, it's not about your marriage, right? It's about the stuff happening in the world, right?
yeah, obviously. But the other thing is, the IPCC report is always conservative. And so countries, including Singapore, have been building infrastructure based on that, right? So what's happening in the environment now, the heat waves we're seeing in Pakistan and India and the Middle East weren't expected until between 2050 and 2070. They're happening now. So that's the thing. So where even Singapore is more prepared than any other country, but by following this sort of almost religion of the IPCC, I think they're doing a lot more now. You can see it to catch up, but it's a big problem, and everyone needs to catch up, and nobody's ready. And now we're going into these economic times where another thing that was always going to happen is the economy was going to falter when we moved into this period, right? Because food security is on the line. Extreme weather events, they're happening more and more, costing more and more. So the economic impact is here while the environment's getting worse. So we needed to start this 20 years ago, expecting it to be as bad as it is now, and we didn't do that anywhere. So that's the fundamental issue. So what you just said there, Joe, and I'll hand it over, but what you just said is, I'm not defending renewables in this case. What I'm saying is wait. Some things require time. We need to understand. We need to give the engineers time, and we just need to grow up, But this attack, so the misinformation and disinformation, it's already out there, and the people who believe it, you will never change their mind. So it just adds to the problem that we've got. We've got to sort this out. We've got to get on top of it, and we've constantly got this argument that is baseless going on, and it's so frustrating, right? When you can see so clearly what's going on. But anyway, anyone else want to join in?
Yeah, I want to share a bit of a personal perspective on it. So not long ago, I attended a workshop called Meta Crisis, which is very interesting. So we heard all this news, and I think some of us just kind of try to avoid it because I think we have the privilege to live in more comfortable places. Attending the workshop really make it very real for all the attendees. And then the next question we ask ourselves is, what can I, as an individual, do something about it? So as a follow-up, we had a group discussion, a volunteered organized group discussion. But we also do recognize as an individual, sometimes we feel so lost. We are not really sure what to do. So instead of just maybe discuss it on a very grand abstract level, which sometimes make us feel more helpless, some of us take a bit more intentional or mindful action, something like try to contribute to recycle or write journals or even just have a peace of mind. So I thought this is really a question, and I have the same question, and I just thought, but what can each one of us do about it?
Yeah, no, I know it's a massive issue. The problem is everyone's looking for simple answers to a complex problem, right? And like everyone needs to do absolutely everything they can. So I say we all need to reduce. Especially if you have a computer or a phone, you're in this class, right? We need to reduce our material and energy consumption by 70%.
Absolutely, and I think we are all committed for that, reducing the carbon emission, but we are not moving that fast. We are not evolving that fast. I think we should be focused more on that commitment for reducing carbon emission, because the global warming, global temperatures are rising, and the way we are looking at this, the way we are implementing it, it's not at the same pace. Plus, I think, of course, I'm not defending renewable energy, like Andrea said, but then in investing and exploring more renewable energy, that to sustainable renewable energy that can last, that can be affordable for everyone, for industries, for various sectors, would be another option where we can look into it. Because understanding our ecosystem, protecting it, and restoring it, we are moving towards what they call as a concrete forest. We're building up infrastructure, growing infrastructure. We're having techs which are having emissions, but we're also losing the natural ecosystem which we have had, like the forests, the wastelands, the oceans. I think one other aspect we should be looking at is restoring all these ecosystems where we can, if we are not able to plant trees, there is a new concept called as, people are planting trees or you doing vegetation on top of the buildings, on the sides of the buildings, where we are still able to maintain the ecosystem and the climate in the right way. So if we also parallelly focus on these kind of transitions or steps, I think we can still achieve that balance in the temperature or balance in the climate change that may, take effect immediately.
Well, we got to hope. So you've just flown in from Mumbai, right? So it's been steaming hot there. Yes.
Yeah.
How was it?
Oh, it is. I mean, Mumbai always used to jump between 22 to 30 degrees, but recently we have had extreme temperatures in Mumbai. I mean, the summers have gone up to 40 degrees in Mumbai. The winters have lowered to 10, 12 degrees in Mumbai. So
Wow.
we never saw such extreme temperatures in Mumbai before, but it's been happening since the last 2 years. At the same time, there's a huge work on infrastructure to upgrade Mumbai. So it's difficult to sustain that way. It's difficult to, and plus Mumbai is, surrounded by the sea. So it's that the weather is humid. It's very difficult to move around in 40 degrees during summers where people are not used to it, extreme heat. So I think it's very difficult. Plus, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, and then you look at the people who live in the slums, right? Which it's so much worse for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Dehydration.
Yeah,
it's bad.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we're all out here living it, but we're lucky. But at a point, the temperature will get so high that those of us who are lucky will no longer be lucky, because when the grids go down because of extreme heat, many people will suffer, right? And probably least able to cope with it. And have you read the book Ministry of the Future? No one? All right. So the very first chapter talks about a heat wave that goes through India and 20 million people die. The very first chapter, right? It's not fact. It's what do you call it? Stanley Robinson.
Wow.
And from there the world moves forward, and it's just a really interesting story. But I wonder how far away that moment is. China's been experiencing unbelievable heat waves, because it's not just the people impacted. Obviously, it's all of nature. It's agriculture. India is the largest rice exporter in the world. That's an important industry, agriculture, for the people in India as well as people beyond India. So yeah, we're getting into dicey territory. All right, Trump's first 100 days. Any moment that caught your attention as he was celebrating the best presidency ever and the best 100 days ever?
Oh man, I tried not to catch any of it. I just was catching up with the reports of it, right? I mean, it really is one of those amazing things where the numbers should be real. I mean, the numbers that they give you the feedback. It's the metric by which you can measure yourself, right? It's the approval ratings, which he's always had so much to say about. They are the worst they've ever been for a president, any president, in their first 100 days. And yet, yeah, he's calling a victory on it. So, it's trying to bend reality in the face of it.
He's looking at suing the publications that are putting out these ratings that say he's like the worst in 7 decades. So he's going to try and use the courts to go after the media for reporting this.
Well, actually, what's been amazing for me is to have the current situation in terms of what the U.S. is facing, right? I mean, if you think about how dire the situation currently is, or the way it feels on the ground, when you talk about what's going to happen in Walmart, and you talk about the ports being half empty or what have you. I mean, all this is basically just, for me, it's just retooling. Like Cynthia said earlier, right? It's probably about people finding new routes to bring in goods from China. So it's you go around this way, you go around that way, you pay 10% instead of the 100 and whatever percent it is. All that's happening, all that big wave of pains coming in, and 25% of people still say it's good. That's what's bizarre to me. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So he's going after the judges who aren't supporting him. So one of his quotes was, "We cannot allow a handful of communist radical left judges to obstruct the enforcement of our laws and assume the duties that belong solely to the President of the United States." Authoritarian much. So he's basically, he's going after them. Nothing will stop me in the mission to keep America safe again. And after a lifetime of unelected bureaucrats stealing your paychecks, attacking your values and trampling your freedoms, we are stopping their gravy train, ending their power trip, and telling thousands of corrupt, incompetent, and unnecessary deep state bureaucrats, "You're fired." Okay. Meanwhile, everyone in the White House who is connected to the White House is making a lot of money by betting on the share market as these tariff announcements are changing. So I can see the people who are making money, and it's not those ones. But yeah, Xintian, do you want to share your perspective?
Yeah, I feel it's just pure confusion and amazement happening at the same time. So I feel, as someone who's from China, who have witnessed different political system and also getting education in Singapore and overseas, I do acknowledge that modern society is really based on Western liberal and democratic principles, and I can really see the benefits of that. But now with Trump doing everything that he has been doing, it's a huge confusion. Like, does it mean it's not working anymore? Like, what is the system we should follow? And everything we learned from, textbook about how democracy works, they're not working anymore, but nobody's really giving you explanation of how can we fix it. So I think for me, it's really as a student that you really don't know what is happening. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, it's a descent into madness, isn't it? That's what it feels like. At what point does it stop? When do those levers click in America that say, come on? So Ken Martin, who's the chair of the Democratic National Committee, said in 100 days, Donald Trump has achieved the unthinkable. He's brought America to the brink of implosion. And so, yeah. So,
yeah, I mean, the tariff war actually triggered a lot of things around the world, not just the market, which became more volatile, but the flow of goods. And like my friend Xintian said, that it's very unpredictable where we are going from here, where this is going to lead, how the markets are going to be, because I think China has been a hub for a huge manufacturing industry as a supplier for many brands around the world, especially Americans. So with this tariff war, I'm not sure how the supply chain, the logistics is going to be affected, but the flow of goods is definitely going to be affected. The manufacturing sector is definitely affected. And yes, it's quite unanticipated, and we're not knowing where this is going. So everybody's trying to play safe now.
Yeah. So I have the great privilege every other week of speaking to a couple of finance guys who Joe knows. And we talked about this last week, but Joe, I wanted to hand it over to you from an economics perspective. I haven't heard one expert say anything good about this, but the other thing that's been a bit alarming is there's no precedent for what's happening. So therefore, any of the predictions that we're hearing, most are saying, well, we can't make any predictions because we've never been in a situation like this. So it's almost, to me, it's almost a parallel to the climate emissions thing. So there's a chart where the emissions go straight up, right? So there's a physics reaction to that. But so we're in this other chart from an economic perspective where they're all saying there's no precedent. We don't know what we're going to be dealing with. What are you seeing out there? What are you hearing?
Okay, well, let me put on my economics expert glasses. No, the thing about tariffs, the idea of tariffs, right, is they actually have a place in the way the world works, as in like in the economic system that we had. This is literally what I'm saying these days, right? The economic system we had, tariffs could be used as a kind of a way to adjust little imbalances, certain things that maybe were overtly unfair. You could try and do something like I've been talking about how this has been a sledgehammer to fix a screwdriver problem, right? So it's not all bad. And the idea of how things could work, this reminds me really of myself when I was back in junior college doing my A levels, and the way you always started an economics essay was you had to make a few assumptions, right? So you had to make a few assumptions: perfect knowledge, perfect flexibility in terms of the market supply and all that, the ability for change to happen, and all these different things. All those assumptions would have to be in place for tariffs to make an idea the way they've been applied right now. You would have to have manufacturers be able to change the way they make things instantaneously. You'd have to have a factory show up tomorrow to change the way goods were made and supplies are made, because of how tariffs are supposed to kind of drive the manufacturing back home again. So the good that can be said about what tariffs could do is that it could really make a difference if done properly. What has been done now is completely improper. It's not addressing the things that are important, right? I mean, the tariffs right now are being applied to the very things that help America become wealthier, right? So the things that America needs, America's manufacturers, that they need to become wealthier, they're being made more expensive. So the raw materials to create more wealth are becoming more expensive, and therefore they're reducing the incentives as well to do that. So if you think about what a high tariff is going to mean, let's say for someone who is manufacturing right now something in America, and let's say their margins are pretty close. If every time they bring in something they can make $5 on a risk of $2, well, that's perhaps good business. It's a risky kind of a proposition, but yeah, maybe you want to take that risk. But if you increase the cost of it to the point where you go like, well, I can maybe risk now $5 to $7, maybe to make 10, because you can't really overstretch the market as well. Then you also put the brakes on the ability to create wealth. So that's the real challenge about it. And the other thing about tariffs is how they really haven't expressed the idea. At least there haven't been enough people to talk about it, to help people understand that actually tariffs are a tax on the poor. So I'm going to try and put this out there so you can use this to tell your friends about this as well, right? Now, why tariffs are a tax on the poor is very simple. The rich spend a lot less money, a lot less of a proportion of a smaller proportion of their wealth on things they need or whatever they want. So they spend a smaller proportion of their wealth, of their income, on things. And tariffs only affect the things. So for a poor person who has to spend 80% of their income, maybe more, on just living, they're paying tariffs on 80% of their consumption, of all the money that they use. That's going to be the kind of tax you actually pay for things. And a rich person actually spends much, much less. So the wealthy person, can throw a big party and have things flown in from countries everywhere, and it will literally be a drop in the bucket for them in terms of what they feel the cost of things are. So take that along with you if you're going out this weekend. That's exactly what it is.
So you got these billionaires making these decisions who aren't impacted by tariffs, but the 30% of the MAGA vote, the 30% of the US population, which are the MAGA voters, are not those billionaires, right? So you're still seeing relatively strong support from the Republican side. Why? Because surely they're already hurting. We're hearing about farmers losing their farms or close to losing their farms. They already lost, USAID sort of paths for their foods, their crops to be sold. Is it just a time frame that we're going to wait until they finally going to go, whoa, this is impacting me?
It's education. It's if you don't know enough about anything and someone else comes in and fills in the gap, you're going to take that as the information that explains everything, right? So
But
if
if you supermarket and it's the price of your shop has doubled.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's Biden's fault according to Trump, but the reality for them as they engage in the world has changed dramatically from a financial perspective. So, I mean, are we going to see a reaction to that? That's kind of confusing.
So this is why when it comes to communication, it's very important for the people who are and again, everybody who speaks it believes they're telling the truth, but for the alternative view, for the people who are trying to bring data to the table, the ability to communicate information and truth in a way that's convincing and gets your attention as well is really important, right? I mean, if we stand back and not talk about stuff, what's going to happen is whoever's out there saying stuff, they're going to actually gain the attention and the mind space of the people, right? So if you think about how that's been used to manipulate people in the past, if like for instance, I can't recall the exact details about it, but there's a famous story about how in the Americas, it's early in the days. I want to say one of the great explorers landed, and they wanted to get something from the people. I think it was to get food from the people to supply their onward mission. And the locals didn't want to provide any food because their culture was about looking after themselves and all that. And there was this bit of knowledge that they had, which is about how there was going to be an eclipse. And they said, if you don't give us the food, we shall cause the moon to disappear or the sun to disappear, or what have you, and all that, right? If you don't have the information, you can create a story that is going to be palatable. It's going to be the answer that you believe is the real answer. So if people haven't been thinking about economics, people haven't been thinking about import and export and stuff like that, and what you have a tough life. Your life is the factories have closed, things are getting more expensive, and then someone comes along and tells you, you know why all that's happened? Well, it's because of China. China's been doing this. China has been manufacturing all these things very cheaply, and your job went to China. You can buy that story and you go like, yeah, that makes sense. And people in China are making all the money from that. Yeah, that makes sense. So what we should do is we should tax these people, right? We should make these people pay for it. So we'll put a tax on them, and that tax is going to be called a tariff. So when Chinese products come in, there's a big tax on it, and Chinese people are going to pay for it. And if you don't have an economics background, or you haven't been studying or thinking about these kind of things, you go like, yeah, that makes sense. That's the kind of thing that's gonna fix things, because they will change things and it will address things. So if there's not enough on the other side to come and just say the simple story and help them understand it, so that they too can have something to say in reply, then it is just going to be it's going to fester. It's going to be there. It's going to be the truth, and then they will work hard to defend it as well. Because if your first beliefs, if you can think about your life, a lot of things are about the first time you start believing something. It's very hard to move you away from what you believe.
Yeah. But I mean, you get my point, right? There's going to come a time when people going into debt for groceries is increasing significantly in the US. So I mean, the reality is already changing on the ground. Their lives are not getting better. We've put the tariffs on the Chinese, make the Chinese pay, but our lives are getting so much worse, and it's happening really quickly now. At some point, there has to be that. I mean, and I think it's actually a really important point for the US to arrive at, where that group of people who are so loyal to Donald Trump wake up and go, wait a minute, he's not on our side, because if they don't get to that point, there's going to be civil war, right? So I've always thought that it's an important community to turn around. But yeah, at some point, I mean, you know, we're living in a world where people aren't believing what they see with their own eyes right across the world. But at some point, you're gonna when it's such a personal impact on you, not just the price of eggs, everything, right? The shops will be empty, and it's not China's fault anymore. At some point, they're going to realize it's not China's fault, right?
Well, the thing about that is, if you think about what's happened in the U.S., is that point actually happened, but in a different form, right? That point actually happened in the sense that the U.S. system, the government, the way things are supposed to work, democracy, it was supposed to deliver a better life for America. It's supposed to have all those kind of things happen. And for a very long time, that wasn't happening. It was getting worse. So that it actually made it possible for someone like Trump to come along and say, you know, all this stuff, it's bullshit, right? So it has already happened once. The question is, will the democratic process that allowed it to happen once be there to make it happen again when this thing flips the other way, right? I that's the real danger that I think about this, is like we may have flipped open a valve in one direction that can't let it go back the other way.
Yeah, you're right. Do you guys want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking as you and Joe were talking, and I think I don't see any course correction here with how the way things are going. I think there would be a time, but I guess the sooner this thing turns upside down, I think there would be a time where everybody would gradually think that we need a course correction in this. And that is where, you know, certain measures might be taken. This is what I'm guessing, because I'm putting out a best case scenario, but it's still quite unpredictable.
I like your optimism.
Yeah.
To me, it's violence, complete civil disruption.
Because
it's
nobody
happening
wants
really
to go
fast
that
now.
way. Yeah,
No,
nobody wants to go that way. No world leader would want that to happen soon. So I think when they see things going in the very bad direction, I think there might be a certain course correction.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking from a more like human or social point of view, because I'm trying to draw from my experience of what's happening in China, right? So I think Trump came on board and he plays on nationalism very heavily. So he's all about make America great again. It's a very emotionally charged thing to say, especially when the working class lost their jobs to China and many developing countries. People have this frustration for a very long time. So I feel it's easy to play on that emotions. Once you have that emotions, it's very hard to see things in a rational way. So I'm drawing parallel in China. Of course, China is a very different stories, but because of the censorship, so it's easier to tell a unified story. And then once you believe in that story, it's very hard to see things elsewhere. You can always find more excuses and you turn the story around. So I feel a lot of time it's an emotional thing.
That's a really interesting perspective. Because I mean, talking about China, because that's our next story, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. So this piece came out, and I haven't seen the video, but it's basically the headline is "China won't kneel down," and we were talking a lot about that a few weeks ago. So this video that's gone out on the Chinese Foreign Ministry's social media channels. Basically, it's calling on the international community to stand up to America's bully leader. It said, bowing to a bully is like drinking poison to quench thirst. It only deepens the crisis. History has proven compromise won't earn you mercy. Kneeling only invites more bullying. China won't kneel down. It talks about how America's economic aggression in the past has destroyed companies like Toshiba and Alstom, which forced them into breakup, financial crisis and bankruptcy, and also sent Japan's economy into decades of anemic growth. it portrays itself as a free trade haven and partner for other countries to safely invest in. And it says, China will stand firm no matter how hard the wind blows. Someone has to step forward, torch in hand, to shatter the fog and illuminate the path ahead. Because, this whole blaming China message that, is being used politically. Of course, all of these CEOs and executives that are standing around Trump at his inauguration, they're the ones who made the decision to outsource the manufacturing to countries like China to bring down the profits. And some of the expertise in China has got like 40 years of development now, so it's not like you can just pick it up from China and bring it back to the US. But there's another video of an American going, we need Americans working for life in these factories, and they hand it down to their children and their grandchildren. And so, do you think Americans want to work in factories anymore? Like, do you think that's the future that they're looking for? But anyway, so as a Chinese person, what's your take?
Thanks for the question. So I was looking at it. I would really like to share from a historical and cultural perspective on this. So I noticed because of the language. So when Chinese language translated into English, it sounds very odd. So we need to really put back in the cultural and historical context to it. So if you know how Chinese modern history has been written, so starting from around 1920s, that's in China, we call it the age of humiliation. That's where China was forced to be opened up, and where there colonializations from, in Chinese term, 8 colonial powers came to China, and then came and take the palaces, came and take the most resources, and make Chinese people become a second class citizens. So that's the background of the story, and this has been taught in school, and it's very salient on people's mind. So if you take that cultural perspective and look at the language again, they realize it's a continuation of the same story. And that's why they use the word kneel down, because in China, kneel down is like a huge humiliation. It's like someone forced you to make you less than a human. So you see the words they play is also very emotionally charged. And I can see how, by connecting the economic issue, but the political issue together with nationalism, it's really unified people in China, right? I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but also at the same time, because China has been through that 100 years of accumulation, and Chinese, because of the rise of technology and business development, and also a huge market, I think Chinese people have also gained the confidence. So people feel a strong sense it's time to rewrite that story. So if you take that lens and you look at the news that come from China, I feel that might give you some perspective of, okay, why the language in that way. So economically, I think China definitely will not give in, but also emotionally, even in terms of the national narrative, it's actually a great time for the Chinese nation to change the perception and to change its branding to the world.
Yeah. No, I definitely said that in the 1920s. Because obviously you had the Opium Wars and everything else going on. Who was the leader of the country at that time?
So it was it was also a chaotic time. So at the beginning, there was Sun Yat-sen who came up with the Republican idea. But before that, it has always been the feudal government, the Qing dynasty. So he came up with the idea and bringing the idea of democracy. But at that time, of course, Republican, of how people need to make decisions. And he's an idealist. He attracted a lot of followers because people really had enough of all the colonial powers came to China, and people so-called raped the country. So that has a very strong idea. But because he's a more idealist, he also, based on his legacy, that forms the Nationalist Party, which is now one of the major parties in Taiwan, which has been kicked out from China from
Chiang Kai-shek.
Party. Yeah, so that's that was actually just very chaotic at the time, and people were really trying to explore. So what's next for China now when the Western powers are rising?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important point that you've raised, just to talk about the century of humiliation, right? That's the right term.
You can say that.
Because that's what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. That China is a proud nation, and the people are a proud nation. But people are proud to be Chinese, but it's also incredibly resilient. And when you look at an American family going without essentials for a few weeks, a few months, the Chinese families can go without essentials for years. And they, especially if the government's saying we've got to do this, we've got to fight, we've got to do it together, we're all in this together, they will be all in it together, and they'll move forward, because I do think there's a rebranding going on as well. But what do you when you sort of look at the mood in China, because there's the Western perspective of China, and they're talking about the economic downturn. It's still expected to grow 4.5%, even though it said it was going to grow 5%. So I'm thinking 0.5%, when I think England's growth is 0.3% or something. So it's still growing, right? What's that? Can you, I know you're not there, but can you grasp the mood in China right now as far as this battle goes?
I feel, to be honest, general mood for individuals. So I like to look at the more ground-up stories. For the individuals, I think, to be honest, life can be tough in a way, not in terms of material well-being. I think generally the nation has been uplifted, but it's that sense of we have been through at least 20 years of really fast growth, and now suddenly the story seems to be different. I think that sentiment started quite strongly during COVID time, where all of a sudden there is a pause to that very prosperous stories that people want to believe in, and the China dream, which is a term that's kind of in contrast to American dream. So people get more confused. So I think earlier, let's say 20 years ago, the young people want to be in all the tech companies. And once you are being in the tech companies, you get great salaries, like you are settled for life. But at the same time, people are willing to work really hard for it. So I don't know if you heard of the term, that's the more extreme term, like 007, like people work like 7 days from until midnight or something. But that's a very extreme term, meaning people believe in living a good life, and they believe in working hard to achieve that at all costs. So that has been the sentiment. But suddenly you start to see a pause during COVID time, and all of a sudden people realize the dream they believe in can be very fragile. So, and then the sentiment actually continued, because people can see previously the market, the global market was there, and a lot of people also engage in entrepreneurship. So so people can really sense that stagnation, and that's again a strong sense of anxiety among there. But of course, economic is still growing, because we have to bear in mind China is a huge country and it started very low according to Western standards. So there's still room for growth for sure. But I do sense a stronger sense of loss. Like, then where do we go from there? Again,
is there any sort of sentiment where the recognition that 7 days a week, 24 hours, 365 days a year is maybe not the best way to go? Because I know in India it's the same. Everyone works so hard all the time, long hours. We hear Elon Musk fighting for the H-1B visa, which is typically a lot of the Indian guys coming and ladies coming over here in the tech industry, because you guys work so much harder than someone like me from Australia, where it's just not part of the culture. It's 9 to 5. That's it. Obviously not everyone, but that culture in both of your countries is so intense. And I don't think a lot of people in the Western world really appreciate that, because the competition's massive, right? For everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the case in most of the part of the world, where at 5 o'clock people would like to shut down their laptop, go home, have some time with their family, so have the right kind of work-life balance. But I mean, in the name of work-life balance, there have been a lot of cases where we've just talked about work-life balance, but there's not been a work-life balance, and people are working harder. But there's a point where we talk about 5 days a week, 4 days a week, work week. When there are people, of course, entrepreneurs who talk about 90 hours a week, 70 hours a week. not everybody would want to go with a 70 hours or 90 hours week. There are entrepreneurs with a zeal, with an enthusiasm, who wants to work hard for a greater goal, for build something. Maybe they have that kind of a zeal to work 90 hours a week. But any other person would not want to work for 90 hours. But still, by default, or the way the system is, people end up working almost 10, 12, 13 hours a day, especially Indians in India, even outside. So
Yeah.
it's an intense competition. Some of them want to sustain, some of them just don't want to grow, not just sustain, not being competition, but build something much bigger. So I think it's an individual perspective, whether you want to work a 90-hour a week to build something much greater, or whether you want to just have a balanced life, or whether you want to be ahead of the competition.
I think it's a real. I mean, even in Singapore, when I first came to Singapore, the hours that people were working. Now, I didn't necessarily think people were working long hours and being highly efficient, but they were working long hours and being seen in the office for long hours, and there were perks for that too. So it wasn't necessarily. But when I work with people from India or work with people from China, they definitely working long hours and being efficient for that whole time. And I've met PhDs behind receptionist desks in India because that's the only job they could get. Getting into university in India or China. I mean, you have to be so off the charts in your final results. My son wouldn't stand a chance getting in from a competition perspective just based on academic results, right? And I think that's a big cultural difference. And a lot of what the US is talking about, bringing stuff back to the US. One, do they want it? Two, will they work hard enough for it? Three, it's going to be cost prohibitive because it's much easier and cheaper to do it out in this part of the world, right? So it just seems like just in a really stupid time, right?
Yeah, and to add on to that, so I'm really grateful that Saurabh is here to share the India perspective, and I think to put things into context, at that time, for example, 10, 20 years ago, a lot of opportunities, like just to work for international factories or international companies, were opportunities that were not before, and China still is a communist country. So we really need to bear that in mind. So for people to work so hard, it was a privilege for them at that time. So, for example, my parents, they were so grateful they could work. And then they really witnessed how working hard have moved the home from countryside to city and gave them reputation as good citizens and even experts in their field. So what individuals want and perhaps what the entrepreneurs want are the same thing. Like people feel when they work hard, they really see the tangible change. So that's I think that's a very important context. But of course, moving things forward, when things become more stagnant, where material well-being stop being the only thing, and also in China because of one-child policy, so the younger generation generally enjoy a much better material well-being. So that sense of loss of I don't want to work so long, right? To just be better off well-being, because I never experienced starvation. I never experienced war, which are actually very real for my parents. So that's emotionally you don't feel connected to that goal, and then so what used to be a privilege become a problem, become a barrier. So that's why that's a very strong sense of generation gap as well.
I agree with her. I totally agree with her, because the Gen Z today doesn't want to work more than the desired or the mentioned number of hours. They are totally focused on, of course, they're focused on their goals, they're focused on their vision on where they want to go with their work, but then they're equally focused on, other things, the work-life balance, what the other activities they do into day-to-day life. So I totally agree with her that, now the newer generation doesn't want to work that hard on. They're working hard. It's not like they're not working, but they don't want to work with the longer hours.
Oh, interesting. So that's like the kids of the generation worldwide, right? But one thing I was going to ask Xintian is there's the Chinese government covers basic things in life. So now, help me understand this. Does it cover housing for people?
No, And also, during communist time, a large population were actually employed by state-owned enterprises, and housing, healthcare, education were actually covered. But that have changed in 1980s when China started to open up and reintegrated in the actual capitalist market, and that's where the housing become part of free market. And I'm not sure whether you guys are aware of, but even just 10 years ago, real estate was crazy in China because of the liberation of markets. So young people were not able to afford housing in the more economically vibrant cities, and that was actually a huge issue. But now, because China's economic growth has been a bit more stagnant, so it become less of an issue. But the housing price, what used to be a given, now it become privilege. Yeah, that's
right. Okay. All right. So I had an understanding that there were certain basic things that the Chinese government took care of for people so that nobody dropped below the poverty line. So that basic sort of social good is gone, and now it's everyone for themselves, or do they still take care of people?
They take care of people in certain ways. For example, so in Singapore we have CPF, so Central Provident Fund. So China have something similar. Actually, China learned from Singapore. If you have work, then a small part of your salary goes into the fund, and the company or organization will top up for you. So you then have a basic retirement fund. And what in China, for my parents' generation, because it was a communist country, so your retirement salary is actually quite substantial. So it will be lower than you actually work, but you have a perfectly great life. But then that's a very generational thing. So for the young people now, it won't be possible. And because of single child, we have a huge actually population crisis. So people also worried about that. And we are not exactly communist country. I mean, on paper it is, but in real life, people have to really work hard to how to make the economic work.
So the social safety net has gone now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's kind of interesting, because then that sort of creates more opportunity for tensions to rise when there is no social safety net, right?
Yeah, there are basic medical coverage, but I think it's also I think your company organization also top up certain money into this card. But I feel it's less powerful than before. Yeah, just because there's less money and the population is not growing as much.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on, and we're not going to. So first of all, we're just looking at the time. Mark Carney was obviously elected the Prime Minister of Canada, which I was kind of happy about. It feels like an adult was elected, and I think we need a few more adults in political leadership. But there's an article in CNN that I recommend. I'll put it in the weekend reads. It's called "Global Populists Once Emulated Trump. Now They're Running From Him." So Plivier, or is that how you say his name? He was using a lot of the terminology of Trump, the woke sort of movement and all that sort of stuff. Where is it? Let me see if I can find it. But Australia's got its election this weekend, and I know Singapore has. But Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who's Labor, looked like he was definitely going towards defeat. But the opposition is Peter Dutton of the Liberal Party, which is like the equivalent of the Republicans. He's another anti-woke culture warrior. I personally just can't, like, the Liberal Party for me shouldn't be allowed to be back in leadership role in Australia for at least another decade, because of what a disaster they were last time. So I was a bit surprised that he was even looking like he had a chance. I'm hoping Albanese gets in. I don't know if he will, but basically this whole story is sort of talking about, if you're using that rhetoric, the divisive rhetoric, anti-DEI, using the word woke, all that sort of stuff, in a lot of parts of the world, basically the voters are saying, no, we've had enough. And I've got to tell you, I'm a bit relieved. They're sort of talking about, what's her name, Marie Le Pen in France, so she's restricted from standing in the next presidential election because of corruption, but potentially maybe not using Trump-style tactics might be in her party's favour. Macron in France obviously was looking like he was going to be well and truly out, but the way he's been a statesman in the last year or so, especially around Ukraine. He seems to be gaining favour back in France. So yeah, being Trumpish is backfiring for politicians around the world, and I'm going to say that's good.
You know, what's been interesting about this for me is for audiences in general, you know, when someone tells you a different way of doing things and it sounds a bit off, sometimes one of the things you ask yourself is, what's the worst that could happen? And I think the rest of the world, at least in these countries that we're seeing where the shift is happening, have Trump to thank, because the answer, what's the worst that can happen, has been answered, right? So, and the thing is, even for these other areas in these other countries, what Trump is doing is not what they intend to do. They don't intend to go that crazy on all the other stuff, but because he's in the same camp as them now, he is brand crazy, right? So now the audience goes like, okay, so all right, you know, I can kind of understand where you are on these things. I can feel the anger and all that, but hold on for a moment. We've just seen what happens when this goes full tilt, right? And so I was actually thinking, we on one hand have a lot to be upset with Trump about, but on this particular issue, I think we actually owe Trump a thanks. You know, inadvertently, he's made life better.
Yeah, well, ultimately, but in the meantime, he might drag the whole global economy down with him. But yeah. At least we'll have some decent politicians out there. Hopefully, the guts to stand up to him.
I'd rather have a situation where we have a bunch of adults trying to fix a problem. As much as a lot can be damaged along the way, I'd rather have a whole group of people who are trying to work and build it up again, or fix it and get it together and have it done, than have it run away with a bunch of people who are just going to destroy everything. You know, there's a great momentum that can happen with, you know, just keeping going. You know, you can just keep going, and someone at some point's got to say, like, you know what, look, give me the car keys. You got to stop driving. You know, I heard an analogy the other day, which I thought was just really great. Trump's been going on about how the rest of the world's been getting a free ride, you know. But one thing that wasn't considered was the advantage of being the one driving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a good analogy. Yeah. Americans really think that, though. They really do. Oh, we've been giving the whole world a free ride. I'm like, just look at the impact on tourism. The amount of money, the share market, the amount of money that gets invested from outside of America into the American share market. You know, it's like, yeah, it's crazy. I'm going to do one more story, and I'm not going to ask Saurabh to comment on this because he is in India, and if he comments on this, it doesn't matter what he says, he will be attacked, because that is the situation in India and Pakistan, and it's very sensitive in both countries, obviously, and we're just talking about it from an outsider looking in, but the Rest is Politics. Do any of you listen to the Rest is Politics podcast?
Well, thanks to you, I do now.
Oh, you do? They're great, right? They're really great. If you want to get a sort of a sense of global politics, they've both been in politics. The left and the right perspective. I just, yeah, it's always good. So another big thing that happened this week was an attack in the Indian-administered region of Kashmir, where 26 people were killed. They were tourists, and the rhetoric since then has been alarming from both countries. Now, if there's one situation that has concerned me for 20, 30 years, it's if India and Pakistan ever seriously go to war with each other, because they're both nuclear powers, and it's you know, it's game over.
Yeah.
And one of the problems we've got is, you know, when Russia first invaded Ukraine, I couldn't believe it, that we were at a time where any country thought that invading another country was a good idea. I just, you know, I was shocked back then. I was shocked by what's happening in Gaza. But if Pakistan and India go head to head, which could happen, it will be, I just don't even want to imagine it, right? But one of the things that I was really interested in on the Rest is Politics podcast is, since the 80s, Pakistan, in 1989, the average person in Pakistan was twice as rich as the average person in India and China. So the Pakistanis typically had 600 a head versus 300 a head. By 2004, China was twice as wealthy as Pakistan, and India is starting to catch up. By 2014, India is creeping ahead, China's streets ahead, and in the present day, a Pakistani is on 1,500 a month, and India is twice as wealthy at 3,000, and in China, they're 9 times as wealthy at 14,000. So if you just think about that from the Pakistanis' point of view, they've slipped back significantly from an economics perspective. We've seen enormous devastation from climate impact. 6% of the country flooded. A glacial lake outbursts continue to be a massive risk. The other thing that's happened is China typically supports Pakistan. The US typically supports India domestically. But obviously with Trump, that's going to change. There's a big water treaty between India and Pakistan. When it was first signed, the population of Pakistan was 46 million, and in India it was 240 million. So it's now 240 million. In India, the population was 436 million, and it's now 1.4 billion. And 300 million people rely on this flow of water. We're seeing glacial melt, and obviously these glaciers have lost 80 tons of water. So there's a water treaty. That's a danger. War for water is always on the rise. In India, there's a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment. And one of the comments that I've seen is like a Gaza-like solution to go and get this Kashmir situation sorted out once and for all. They're talking about military strikes. So there's 2 extremes: a gentler, which is somewhere in the Kashmiri region, a small outpost of military, or in Pakistan proper. That would be a significant escalation. There's a Pakistani army chief called Asim Munir, and he's a concern. He made a speech before these attacks in Kashmir, and the words he used are being interpreted as he's potentially not going to be like the last guy who used the backdoor diplomacy channels. So when I think about what's happened to Pakistan, its economy is weakened, nationally humiliated. Now, humiliation, as we know, is never a good thing. And nationalism in both India and Pakistan is on the rise. In India, it has been for some time. So the US has stepped out. When the Afghanistan war was going on, the US put a lot of money into Pakistan as part of that, but they've stopped that funding. The US is also, China has also withdrawn a lot of its money. So I'm very concerned about this. Any thoughts?
The challenge about this is about how cooler heads are going to prevail, and there is an unfortunate situation where lines have been crossed, and now what do you have to do, right?
Yeah.
I think because I was listening to
something.
the podcast. I beg your pardon?
You got to do something, right? You got to respond.
Yeah, someone's done something. Someone's hit you. Someone's thrown a punch. Now you've got to respond, right? What's an appropriate response? And there is pride on the line. How do you do this in a deft enough way so that you can respond and without having to tilt it into full on warfare, right? I mean, the question is, what is the response going to be? How bad will it be? Who gets hurt? Right, and if you think about maybe a surgical response, that could be a solution as well, but it could be just the wrong person in the way, and you end up with another kind of a conflict brewing over. So it's really on a knife's edge, right? If you think about that, because you have not just you don't just have those 3 parties all waiting to see what's going to go on. You have three powerful parties waiting to see what's going to go on. They're not there without any ability to cause great harm to each other and the rest of us as well. And that's really the challenge. You know, the old Chinese proverb, I think, is when the elephants fight, the grass gets flattened, or something like that, right? I don't like
that
being
true?
grass. I'm not sure if I got it right, Cynthia. Is that?
I'm trying to find the exact phrase.
My boss said it some time ago, so I thought it was an appropriate kind of a thing. Yeah, when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. So we have to watch very carefully what happens. And I fully understand as well. It's such a delicate thing, right? Because there's a it's you can't say anything. I think Saurabh is staying out of this simply because even not to say something that is not either way is also the wrong thing to say. It's just such a terrible situation to be in, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we just can't have another escalation here. We just really can't. Like, I know something's going to happen, but I really hope those channels in the back are working. Xintian, do you have any thoughts there? Because of course China's got a piece of Kashmir as well, right?
Yeah. So I was trying to just from someone from China. I know among the people, we always know China has very good relationship with Pakistan. They even use a phrase like brothers. I'm sure there's some histories, but maybe just because China wants to be friends with Pakistan, so it can, I don't know, so it can balance out India. That's my assumption. I'm not an expert, but I know it has always been very friendly, and there were stories of if you're Chinese and we go to Pakistan, people treat you really nicely and all. But of course, because Chinese in the past 100 years, when you go out to the world, you were kind of discriminated against. So when you hear like stories about Pakistanis like treated as brothers, that people feel very happy about it. But that's really on the ground, the sentiment I get. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and right. I'm sure, that's the stories, at least, that's been told to the people.
Yeah, but that economic pullback, first of all, the US, once it left Afghanistan, and now China with its, what's it called? What's the road?
One road, one belt, initiated.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So they pulled back spending there as well. So you've got a country like Pakistan that's in economic turmoil. Politically, it's very unstable as well. So it's all the pieces that are going to come together. There's a term in Pakistan, and I don't know if it's an equivalent term in India, but it's the men who stand around leaning on walls. And it's a term that I heard, which I thought was really incredible. So if you go to, I've seen it in India, where there's just thousands and thousands of young men anywhere you go, just with nothing to do. They've got no job. They've got no opportunity. There's nothing to do, and that is never good for any society to have a lot of men hanging around with nothing to do, because they get up to no good, right? Because they've got no pride in themselves. And that's a culturally very, very challenging thing. So war's good because you can just put them into the military, and so I just really hope it doesn't happen. It really worries me what's going on there now. It's probably the thing concerning me the most at the moment.
Yeah, if only what we could do is what we used to do when we were in university. I don't know whether you've ever heard of what is a song fight. For the uninitiated, this is what used to happen. I can't say for sure it still happens in university here. The different halls would get involved in what we call song fights. We would train and get ourselves prepared. It was about shouting and singing chants and going to a kind of a battle with all the other halls. We would all meet at the sports center, at the big open space in the sports center. The different halls would come together. All the freshmen would be shouting their songs as loud as possible. And everybody went back to the halls, and every hall heard the same thing. We won. I think if we can do that kind of thing where everyone feels that they've had a chance to to let it out and go back and have a sense of victory, that would be great. I think that would be the if a wiser person, if a wiser force could prevail on all this, everybody could have that kind of feeling. So, and it may have to come to a sort of skirmish or something that happens, in the moment. The other idea that I've always enjoyed was, what if we reduce war to a very simple thing, right? Have you send your champion, and we will put them in a ring, and they will have one fight, and it'll decide the outcome. It's been done, and I wonder whether we can go back to that.
Yeah. Let's put the leaders in.
The gladiators.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Should we wrap up? Because I know we've all got to go and get glammed up so we can meet tonight. So
yeah.
Looking forward to meeting you both, I think, for the first time. All right. What is keeping you distracted at the moment? Anything non-news related? Just something that tickles your brain, or a hobby, new podcast, book, TV?
Oh, well, right now I'm hungry, so my stomach is distracting me. But yeah, so the one thing distracting me right now is how to market my book, because I'm just published it. The only thought in my mind is, where do I market it? How do I market it? And how do I get it on the shelves, on the airport, crosswords, everywhere?
All right. When you learn, put it together and share it with everybody, because it's actually really intense.
Sure. I've got a couple of copies here. So yeah, I can share.
I'll give you a couple of tips that I've learned on book marketing. It's grueling, but I'm sure there's going to be somebody speaking about this at conventions. So, but yeah, it's a grueling thing. So,
yeah.
Cynthia?
Right. So for myself, I think perhaps not a distraction, but a change of direction, because I've also recently resigned from my job, and because I do realize that it's so important to have that personal voice, and I do feel like some of there's certain things that I feel I really want to share, and only for my quite unique background, I think only I can share, but I've never really realized that. So I have tried a few different industries, and they're all been great, but something is missing. So I feel perhaps this is an opportunity to explore a bit more, to be more authentic, and to believe more wholeheartedly. And that's why I'm here, like sharing the views and looking forward to more meaningful exchanges and connections.
Nice. I think you've got a fantastic opportunity. Definitely. The world needs the perspective that you have, because I talk to people all the time from outside of Asia, and they just don't know how to make sense of it. They really don't. It doesn't make any sense to them. And I've been here for more than 20 years, and I'm still trying to make sense of it. But it's a very different culture. It's worth understanding. And I think you have a very beautiful approach in presenting it. So yeah, I can see you succeeding. Definitely.
Thank you. Looking forward to learning more.
Yeah, definitely. Joe, what ancient history are you watching now?
Well, actually, what I've been doing is this past week, my wife was asking me what was I watching, and I realized I haven't been watching anything. I've hardly been online or watching stuff. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. What's really distracting me is what I should be contributing to the LinkedIn world. As in, like, I think there's been a lot of talk about what happens. I've been basically looking left and right and everywhere to find all the experts and their opinions about what to do in LinkedIn, and I've come to the conclusion that everything you do is wrong, everything you do is right. And you're kind of at the mercy of the algorithm. But I think the one key thing is you have to do something, which is I'm happy to do. So I've been thinking about that aspect of things. What do I do? So I think what I'll be doing is I'm going to be ending up doing a lot of videos on LinkedIn on various topics to try and help anybody who needs that kind of information. But what I have been quietly distracted by as well is the book that I want to work on. So I've always thought of books that I want to work on, and what I've gone is a little bit further by saying that I've got this book that I'm going to write. So I think I'm closer to it. And the name of the book so far is Telling Better Lies, or Tell Better Lies.
Nice.
And essentially, it's the idea that, look, everything in the world is a fiction anyway. Everything created, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, it always has been a fiction. Even something that you consider a fact, the name of it and what you call it and how you regard it all has been a fiction. So we need to do better in coming up with the stories we surround these things. So if we're going to be in business for ourselves, if we're going to try and save the world, if we're going to try and get someone to buy X, Y, or Z, we need to, in a sense, tell better lies. So that's the story that I'm working on. I have discovered that one of the things I'm really bad at, though, is finishing a long-term project, which basically describes a book.
Yeah, you got to get lost into it for the time it takes to finish it. And then you got to get lost in it at least 2 or 3 more times, if not more, as you edit it. So give us a time, like give us a date, first draft date, make a commitment.
I don't know. I'm actually doing something which is, I think, controversial in the sense that I'm using AI significantly in the way I want to create this book, and I know that in one way people feel, they may not feel great about the idea that AI is involved in creating a book, but I kind of think it's similar to ghostwriting, right? I think ghostwriters actually, very often what they do is they're given some stuff and then they put some words together to try and reflect the story. And I've seen some ghostwriting for real. I mean, like the manual way of ghostwriting with less than desirable results anyway. And for me, the idea that you could employ a large language model that's been built on the authorship of thousands and thousands of books by thousands and thousands of experts that could come up with something sensible to say that you can guide with your prompts, may produce a worthwhile result as well. And of course, the aspects of it that have to be derived organically from what I put into it. But hopefully it'll be a worthy thing to consider.
All right. Well, you're doing a great job on LinkedIn at the moment, so just make sure that character comes through the book, because that's the important thing. Like, if you're not following Joe on LinkedIn, follow him. He's good. He's good fun to follow. I'm just sharing Saurabh's information, and here you go, Xintian. So I finished watching Ted Lasso recently, which made me feel good. So I've watched it for the second time. I just needed to watch something that felt good. Have you guys watched Ted Lasso?
No, not recently.
But you have watched it?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a new season coming out, so I'm very excited about that. But
Awesome.
I needed to get away from, because while most people spend their lives avoiding the news, I'm always in the news, right? So I need to be distracted. But anyway, there's a new Jack Reacher series out.
Yeah.
Do we have any? Yeah. All right. So I like my man big and muscly, and so that's what got me into Jack Reacher. But I have to say, this latest season is the worst one I've seen so far. The acting is pathetic, but he takes his clothes off a lot, so I can cope with that.
Yeah,
I still like Tom Cruise as the Jack Reacher.
No.
Yeah.
I like this one.
Well, I was so pleased to hear you say that you thought this new season is not great, because I was a bit worried there for a moment.
Yeah, no, it's I was a bit, because the first couple were, I mean, the acting was good enough. I mean, he's, but this one is like, God, really? And Steve, my husband's read all the books, and he's surprised that they did this story out of all the stories that they've got. But No, I like him as Jack Reacher. Yeah. Bit of eye candy never hurts. Anyway, thank you both for coming to join us. We're looking forward to spending the rest of the weekend with you. Thank you, Joe. And just wishing everyone a happy weekend. The four of us will be in a convention hall for the next few days, hopefully getting inspired and learning new things. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks, right, Joe?
Thank you
we'll
so
see
much
you at the
for
next
inviting me.
The No Show. And by the way, if you haven't liked or subscribed yet, please do that. Just so you get reminded that we're here. It's a long show. Hopefully, you find some things along the way that help explain things. If nothing, I hope you pick up the idea of how to tell your friends about tariffs and how they hurt, because a lot of people need to know that. And we'll see you at the next one.
Do you guys want to say a final farewell?
No, thank you. It was fun. Great conversation. Thank you for inviting us here. Loved it. See you soon in the convention.
Yeah. Look forward to it.
Thanks for having us. And I realize it's really important to share your perspective, because we all have our quite unique perspective, and it's very rare to have this kind of conversation. So thanks for making it possible. We need more of this.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. It's been great having you both. All right, we'll see you soon. All right, bye.